Are you a football fan? Have you ever found yourself wondering, what in the world was that ref thinking? Well, Mike D, the referee, is here to help you. Join me on Whistle Talk as I talk to professionals on the field and in the booth to help you understand what is going on inside the mind of a football official. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Whistle Talk. Mike D, the referee, joining you once again. Must ask everybody that's out there, if you are listening to the show and you are enjoying it, please hit those like buttons, hit those subscribe buttons. Give me a review, good or bad. I really don't care. I'm thick-skinned. But let's just get some feedback so we can make this make our message get out there a little bit more to everybody. Once again, joining you from another snowy night here in New Jersey, getting some flurries here, but not the big snowstorm that we were told we were getting. My guest tonight is actually a fellow Jerseyite, Jerseyite. I don't even know how we would refer to it. Jim Quirk. Jim Quirk joining me here from New Jersey. Jim Quirk is an NFL official, so I've raised my level of game here, bringing on somebody from the big show. Jim, thank you very much for taking time out tonight to join us on the show. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So, kind of gave a short little segue there to you. Why don't you let the listeners just know a little bit about you and your road to the big show, the NFL?
Of course. Well, so I started like most of us. We all started at the Pop Warner in the high school level. As a matter of fact, I did most of my officiating at the Shore. I worked in the Shore Conference. I did high school. I did small college. Then I got into Division I in 2002. At the same time, I was doing arena. And I was doing Arena 2. Arena 2 is like AAA baseball, right? It's like not the big leagues. So I was going to like Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, Albany, New York, Mohegan Sun, places like that. But I did Arena 2. Then I did NFL Europe. And that was sort of the stepping stone to apply to the NFL. So I was doing NFL Europe while I was in Division I. I was in Conference USA, which is not a real football powerhouse, right? But the reason I was in it was West Point was in the conference back in '02, I guess, and they wanted some northern officials. So most of the guys that wanted to do college ball would go the Big East route when we had Big East football years ago. I was in the Atlantic 10, and I was in and I was supplemental in Conference USA, and I got into Conference USA full fledged. And then a year or two later, Army left, and there were no schools even near me. But that was my Division I officiating career, was in Conference USA. And at one point, we had our boss was a guy named Gerald Austin, who was a white hat in the NFL for years.
Okay.
He trained us. He trained us to mechanically and philosophically how to officiate. So at one point, we had more guys in the NFL than any other conference. And it's strange because SEC, Big Ten, that's better football, obviously. But we had, I think, 16 guys on the staff from Conference USA. So
that's pretty cool. I didn't realize that. I didn't realize that Jerry Austin was still involved at the college level too, while being a white hat. So that's definitely something.
I want to say his first year in Conference USA was like 2001. He might have still been on the field. I can't remember. But even after he left the NFL field, he was the supervisor of officials for Conference USA up until a few years ago. So he's a very nice man, and like I said, he trained us with NFL mechanics, so that really helped. And I think that's why a lot of us were able to get into the league because we had been trained the way they wanted officials, basically.
Okay. Gosh, and you're bringing up the arena league too. I remember the original arena league, and there's still some arena leagues that are around there now too. So it's still it's a crazy world how that
it is.
goes.
Arena 1 had a TV contract that they were on, I don't know, NBC, so they were a big deal. And then once they lost the TV contract, like you said, it sort of splintered. There are a lot of different indoor leagues. They play eight men football with, I guess, 3 officials. I don't even know anymore. But it's great. It's great if you're a downfield official. So I was always downfield because they throw the ball 50, 60, 70 times a game.
About 95% of the time.
No kidding, no kidding. So it's a good way to train, and like I said, I would venture to say 80% of the guys in the league now, the men and women, probably worked arena at some point. If I had to
Okay.
guess, yeah.
And the NFL Europe, that is it the EFL that's still around today? Because I know that kind of has fluctuated a little bit.
No, it's different. That's a great question. So NFL Europe used to be the training ground for officials, and I was there in '05 and '06, and
Okay.
then '07 I think was the last year. And I think when the war broke out in the Middle East and Iraq, they stopped NFL Europe, and it was
Hmm.
a great training ground. Now I think they use the spring leagues like the UFL and the
Yep.
XFL as a substitute for NFL Europe. But it was a great way to learn. When I was there, there were like I guess 5 teams in Germany and 1 team in Amsterdam.
Okay.
But previous to that, there were teams in Scotland and London and all over the place. Yeah.
Yep, and that's the European Football League that they have today. It's a little bit more spread out, but
Okay.
still pretty huge in Germany. I know the Munich team is pretty dominant. And actually, my previous episode is going to be with a gentleman who is an official from England who's still working in the European League right now.
It's really cool. So we had the Giants in Munich, Giants against the
Yep.
Panthers, and we had a bunch of international officials come to our meeting on the day before the game on Saturday. And I want to say the chain crew was made up of European officials, and it was great. I mean, we took pictures. They gave us gifts. It was really neat because it was an exchange of ideas, and they did say that I want to say they play pretty close to NFL rules. We were asking them questions
Yep.
about different things. As you know, a lot of it is philosophy. At different levels, it's still the same game, but it's just philosophy on what you call, what you don't call. But they're really eager to learn. And like I said, when I was in NFL Europe, I think we had one European official on every crew, like one local
Okay.
person. But now, as you said, all the officials are homegrown over there.
So now you were talking about using the spring leagues, which are going to be starting up in about a month or
Yeah.
so here. We're recording right now in February. Um, but I know the NFL has what's called the Mackey program. Am I correct in saying
Yes,
that
Wayne.
for
So
training?
Wayne, it's funny. I'm sitting in my office right now, and I was on an Arena Two crew with Wayne. So Wayne Mackey, he was from Brooklyn, and yes,
Okay.
the Mackey. So it used to be called the ODP, the Official Development Program. They renamed it the MDP, the Mackey Development Program. So that's named after Wayne Mackey. Yeah. Yep.
Okay. And now, how does that work, and how does that tie in with the spring leagues, and I guess with the European League? Was it around? Was something like that around when you were coming up through the ranks?
It wasn't. It wasn't. So they used NFL Europe as like a training ground, but since NFL Europe disappeared, I want to say maybe 8, 10 years ago, they started these developmental lists. And to give you an example, I was at training camp in August in Pittsburgh. So we had a
Okay.
crew. We were doing a joint practice with between the Steelers and the Bills, and they had a crew of college guys that are MDP officials. They're on the
Yep.
list. Yeah. So that those guys, they may work like the Senior Bowl and the Shrine Bowl and those type of games. They also work in the spring leagues. But so right now, I think Mike Pereira and Dean Blandino. Pereira hired me. He used to be the supervisor officials. I think they're like in charge somehow of officiating in those leagues. So they work with the NFL and they sort of identify officials. And again, it's like anything else. You need reps. So they get the reps in the spring,
Yeah.
and that's sort of the feeder program now.
Oh, that's good stuff. That's good
Yeah.
stuff. And that's something that I know a lot of newer officials and a lot of people have asked me about. I mean, watching the games on Sunday, of how they get there, how do you get to be out there on a Sunday or Monday night or Thursday night? I mean, the schedule you guys have now today is pretty crazy. But I personally don't know, so that's why I'm happy that you were able to jump on with us, and hopefully, as we progress through the show, you can kind of lead us into where your roots started, as you mentioned, the short conference, and now you worked your way up to the NFL. But I also got to ask you, and I'd be remiss if I didn't. You also had some other ties to the NFL prior to you getting into the NFL. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, that's important. So my dad was in the league for 21 years. He
Yep.
retired. He retired before he got in. So he retired, I think, after the '08 season. I got in 2010. But you'd be amazed. We have a lot. So my referee is Sean Hockley, right? His
Okay.
father was Ed Hockley. Everyone knows
Yep.
Ed Hockley. He's probably the most famous white hat around. Exactly, with little messes. We have a couple sets of brothers. We have a couple sets of fathers and sons. I don't know if Sean ever worked with his dad. I worked with my dad one game in NFL Europe, which was really cool, like in
Nice.
2005. But I never worked an NFL game with him. But so Mike Pereira and a lot of the supervisors were really big on that because if you think about it, just like a coach, you watch a game differently than a fan would.
Yeah.
So I grew up, in the short conference running around the sidelines. I'll tell you a funny story. Back like in the, I don't know, the 70s, my dad was doing a game at Brick High School, and Warren Wolf was the coach at Brick, right? So I'm doing the clip or something on the sideline with the chain crew, and I convinced the chain crew that you have to switch sides at halftime, which you do in the NFL, but not
Yes, you
in, I
do.
guess, not in high school. And then Warren Wolf was screaming and yelling because the chains were on the wrong side of the field. And it was my fault. I was like a 10-year-old kid, screaming and
Yeah.
yelling.
And,
Yeah, so
and for the listeners out there, Warren Wolf is an absolute icon here in the state of New Jersey. He's either one or two and the all-time winningest coaches here in the state of New Jersey. So anybody that is from the Shore area or even from the North Jersey area definitely knows the name Warren Wolf. So that's a pretty funny story with a pretty iconic individual right there.
yeah, and again, it's funny, things like that stick in your mind, and that was probably, I don't know, late '70s, early '80s, whatever. When I was a kid, I would run around, I'd be the ball boy, whatever, do stuff with my dad, and it helped. And then obviously, as you move up the ranks, you get a lot more feedback, a lot more constructive feedback. And my dad got in the NFL, I think, when I was in college, so I was a
Okay.
sophomore in college. So he was sort of working his way up as I was playing. When I was in high school and college, my mom would always have to run through the goalposts on senior day and that kind of stuff because my dad was out officiating. But it
Yep.
was okay. We knew the drill, and that's part of being a part of an officiating family.
So now you played college football. You went to a Division III college, like
Yes.
myself. I also played in a Division III college rank. So I understand it's still great football, even though it's not as fast as the Division I level. Um, but how has that helped you in your officiating career, being a former player and being at a pretty high level? Division III is still a high level of football. Has that had an effect on you?
It definitely helps. Now I was a center in high school and college, but I'm a downfield official, so I'm dealing more with pass interference and the smaller, faster guys.
Yep.
But it still gives you still have a football acumen. You know what's going on. You sort of know the situations. It definitely helps. I mean, I think we have a lot of ex players. As a matter of fact, the last two umpires that worked the Super Bowl. This year it was Mike Morton. Last year it was Terry
Yep.
Killens, who's on my crew. They both played in the NFL. So anyone, and obviously they were a lot better than I was, but I mean, anyone who played the game sort of has a sense of what of how things work. So I do think that helps. I definitely do. Yeah.
And the one thing that I've always talked about is just the camaraderie of the team that you're now on again. Now with being with Sean's crew, it's still a team mentality of having each other's back. And I've always talked about it as being a former player, being a former coach too. Just that camaraderie that we have as a crew makes a big difference for us to work better on the games. And for all the listeners out there, if you think about the good teams that you're watching are typically all in sync with each other. Well, it's the same thing I feel for us as officials. When we're all in sync with each other, we're having a really good game, which the fans hopefully don't notice. So that, in
Yes.
my
Yeah.
opinion.
No, that's true, and I mean Sean Hockley, he's great about crew, and it is all about crew, and we've all worked on crews, and some mesh better than others, but there's no question you need to have a good dynamic with the crew, whether it's a 5-man crew, a 7-man crew, whatever it may be. It does matter. Yeah.
So now today we're working with Sean's crew. You're a deep official. Have you always been a deep official?
Yeah, so I was a field judge in college. Then when I got in the NFL, I was a field judge, and then after 3 years, they asked me to move to back judge. And I really hadn't worked back judge other than arena two. I hadn't worked
Okay.
back judge. So I did 6 years at back judge. Now I'm a side judge, and it's basically
Okay.
like if you equate it to baseball, it's like left field, center field, right field. It's downfield. I'm not trained to be a white hat like you. I'm not trained to be an umpire or a line of scrimmage guy. I'm trained to be a downfield guy. So I think
Yep.
that's the only thing that's a little different is when they hire referees from college, they generally don't hire them as a white hat in the NFL. They'll put them at a position, and so they'll put a referee, let's say downfield for a year or two, and then he'll graduate to becoming a referee, which is his natural position.
Yep.
But in our case, like I said, I've never been a white hat, and I'm a downfield official. Yeah.
Now it's something that I've noticed, and I don't know if you'd be able to give me a straight, not a straight answer, but a fully honest answer, knowing the statistics of it. But it
Mhm.
seems like a lot of the NFL white hats were former deep officials.
It's weird because if you went back, like Sean's a perfect example. They were white hats in college. They were probably very good
Okay.
white hats in college. But then when they got hired, yeah, you're right. They could be deep officials. What they're doing a lot of now, the last, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years, is they're making them umpires. Because if you remember, we moved the umpire
To the
from
offense.
the middle to the offensive backfield. So they have the same perspective as a referee. So having a college referee working as an NFL umpire isn't a big switch. And then eventually, when a white hat spot opens up, they'll become a referee. So
Okay.
I would guess lately, the last 5, 6, 7 years, some of those referees were prior to that umpires. But like Sean, like I said, Sean was a back judge. I was with Adrian Hill for 5 years before that. He was a downfield official, I believe. So
Mhm.
you are right. But I think that when they hire those guys, they know that eventually they're going to be referees. They're going to be crew chiefs at some point.
So now, and the reason I'm bringing that up is going back. You brought up the analogy of baseball of the outfielder position. I also, in my personal opinion, think that back there you're also like the catcher, where you're able to get all perspectives of everything that's going on, so you could see the game a little bit more, and in a learning process of building up to become the white hat. Where, as you were talking, the umpire used to be on the defensive side of the ball, right there with the linebackers, very focused on now. I'm not taking away. I know you have keys and stuff like that, but your keys are at a much broader spectrum than, say, the umpire back in the day, or even the short wing. So it's definitely a great way, and especially younger officials, to learn the game, especially at the high school level, of being able to see the whole field from a different point of view. So just something to keep in mind for the younger people that are thinking
No,
about
that's a
breaking in.
great point. That's a great point. And the other thing is, whether it's the NFL level or the high school level, if you get with people who've been around a while, like I know whenever they hire a guy they want to be a referee, they put him with a veteran referee because he learns in the
Yeah.
meetings and just like you said, the crew dynamics. So any young official anywhere can pick up a lot from the more experienced people. Yeah.
Yep. So now your role as the side judge, does it differ from the side judge at the high school level and the college level with what the
Um,
responsibilities you may have?
Well, it's weird. So I've told a lot of people this when they call me with questions about targeting and stuff. I'm like, I don't know all the high school and college rules. Mechanically, downfield is downfield, but like for example, on field goals and extra points, the side judge comes in as almost like a double umpire. Now I've noticed in college, I think they have three guys there, three people there. Where does I don't even know where the side judge goes in high school on a scrimmage kick, that kind of field goal at extra point.
So for us, with the 6-man mechanic, the two deep wings are the two on the
Oh, the
upright, and the
goalpost.
umpire's
Okay.
by himself in the middle. So we
Right.
got
That would
the
make
short
sense.
wing
That would make
stay.
sense. Yeah, that makes sense because you
Yep.
don't have a back. So it's funny. I guess I'm so old that when I did high school ball, we had four, and we had to fight like heck to get five. And
Yep.
now, like you said, now you're at six. And I know sometimes they use seven in the playoffs or whatever it is. But yeah, the mechanics. I think for the most part, the responsibilities are the same. As I mentioned before, philosophies differ. I go to high school games and I sit in the stands. My buddy's son was playing last year, so I'd go to all the games with him, and I'd hear the parents screaming and yelling. And why isn't that official looking at the ball carrier? I'm like, because he's not supposed to be. He's looking at
No.
his keys and looking where he's supposed to look. So we sort of know what we're supposed to do based on our position.
So now with the side judge, does the NFL have a backup clock? Or is there an
Yeah,
on-field clock that's still kept?
that's a great question. Yeah, side judge is respons. We're all responsible for the clock, but that is the side judge's primary responsibility. Most clock operators are good, but we've had times where we have to reset the game clock. Replay does help. They'll get in our
Hmm.
ear and say, like I'll say, hey, we lost a second or two. Put it back on, and they'll say, well, it's actually three. But yeah, you're right. The side judge does have primary responsibility, but everyone's responsible to make sure the clock is stopped when it should be and it's running when it should be, and so on.
Yeah, and you guys have not only the 60 to 95,000 people in the stands looking at you to make sure everything's copacetic, but now you got everyone on TV.
Oh yeah,
So and the clock management is a major point of emphasis with just watching the game and the scrutiny of the coaching that goes on. So time management definitely plays a major part in it. So we want to do our role to make sure that it's all correct, and you guys especially. So
exactly right. Again, as you alluded to, the fact that the TV is all over the place. There's a million replays. There's a million different angles. Everyone can make the right call when they're sitting on their couch. As you know, they're all at 100%. But when you're on the field and you have a split second, it makes it a little bit different, and you don't have the luxury of that. One of our biggest pet peeves is when they have the play clock on the screen, right? And it
yeah,
looks like there's a delay of game. It goes to zero. We have philosophies where, as you know, it's you give them an extra tick, whatever. But people are screaming, "Why isn't that delay of game?" Because they don't want it to be delay of game.
yep.
So you don't let the TV fool you in that case. So
Well, you could always tell them the TV that it's just a time delay between the TV and what they're seeing. So,
if they're not synced, right? We use that too. The clocks aren't synced. Yeah, exactly.
no, but to expand upon that, it's usually the team that's losing that's going to complain about that. But can you just kind of expand on the thought process with that? Because that's a great point. Because I understand it that you're going to kind of give them the benefit of the doubt, and is it the philosophy of you see the clock go to zero and then you're going to blow the whistle and
Yeah.
throw
So
the
what
flag?
happens is, so in that case, the back judge is responsible for the play clock, right? So he's usually looking through. He sees at zero. He'll look down. If the ball has not moved, it's a delay game. But if the ball has started to move or it's in motion, then he'll let it go. Another thing that's really interesting they started this past year was, let's say you have I don't know, 2:25 on the game clock, going down to the 2-minute warning. If the play clock, if they're on the same number, let's say the play clock's at 25 and the
Yep.
game clock's at 2:25, they don't want to delay game. So if at any point, even for a split second, if they share the same number, it's not a delay. Now, if it's 2:26 on the game clock and the play clock starts at 25, you're going to have a 1 second differential. But yeah, so little things like that, that's a philosophy thing. And a lot of times, the networks don't know it. The fans certainly don't know it. The announcers don't know it. So it makes us look bad when in fact we're doing what we're supposed to do.
Yeah, and I know that scenario actually came up in one of the playoff games this year, where it wasn't perfectly synced. I think it
Yeah.
was 25.8 and a 25 second, and they're like, "Well, why wasn't that a penalty?" And what people don't realize is that you're not sitting there with the whistle in your mouth and the flag at your holster, like in your
Right.
hand at your holster, waiting for it. Oh, it's zero. Let me hit it now. And no, like you said, you're looking at the clock, see the zero, then check the ball. And if the ball goes off, so it could be 26 seconds, but we're not looking to try to bang every single person on a delay game. It would make the game awful.
They don't, like you said before, they don't want us inserting ourselves in the game. They let the players play. Yeah, there's a thing like you guys. Most officials now have earpieces, right? They can
Yep.
communicate amongst themselves. So we'll do that. We'll say, they got to snap the ball, or they don't have to snap the ball. So that just you say that right away, so so we're all on the same page, basically. But it's again, as I said before, there are philosophies, and so this time of year, I guess it'll be next month. They have competition committee meetings, right? And that's where they make the rules. So
Okay.
I think it's GM coaches and a couple officials. They make the rules. So they'll make the rules and/or the philosophies to tell us what they want for next year. So we're just enforcing the rules like any other officials, but they're making the rules, making any changes they think that are needed.
Yeah, and you brought up a good point about will you need to snap it or not. For us at the high school level, In our area, we have one school that has a play clock.
Visible. Yeah, I was
Yeah,
wondering that. Yes, because I've seen
yep,
the guys like the back judge. What do you put your hand up in the air when there's 10 seconds
correct.
left or something? Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so we'll come out onto the field, and the individual will have a red wristband on so that they can be identified by the quarterback and by the coach. But because it's kept, we have a manual buzzer that we're pretty much wearing on our hip. Or some guys are old school and they'll just look at a clock, look at a watch really quick.
Right, right.
Um, but we're communicating with each other because the coaches are always asking us, do I need to run a play? Or can
Yeah,
we let it run out? So with the O to O system, it's, hey, they're looking to run it out. Are we good? Yeah. Okay, coach, you're good.
yeah,
Keep your kids, or guys, head off to the sidelines. I'm in the middle of the
sure.
field. If I know that they're not going to snap the ball, guys, go to the sidelines. So get out of here. No need to be out here. So it's just the communication aspect does definitely play a part in it. And for us, not having the visual screen itself kind of gives us a little bit more leeway. But we're also going to play and understand the situation of the game and stuff like that too.
Yeah,
So if it's a tight game, late in the game, things like that, we're going to be
yep.
more stringent with it. Also, we got coaches that are looking for, where's the clock? Where's the clock? All right, we're going to the last second before we snap it. So different things like that. So
I've gone to high school games, as I said, with my buddy, and I'll hear parents or someone in the stands saying, "Oh, they're taking forever to snap it," and I'll just look at my watch, and so everyone, they're usually, like you said, they're right on, and if it's a blowout, maybe they give an extra second or two. The whole time and score thing comes into play. I was talking to someone about that. I guess we were watching the Super Bowl, and obviously the Super Bowl was a blowout. And I said, when it comes to a safety foul, you're going to call it regardless, but you're not going to call ticky tack stuff if it's time and score. If a team's down by 20 points and there's 2 minutes left in the game, why call a inconsequential hold? That type of thing,
yep.
So that goes. It works the same way with clock management.
And that's funny that you say that, because that is definitely something that we at the younger level do. But to hear that the NFL is also doing that, the safety ones, there's no part of the game for any of that stuff. But a hold here and there, especially in a game like that, what is it going to do? It's going to extend the game, and it's going to put the potential for an injury back out there.
Correct.
So
Correct. Yeah.
we want to get the game continuing to move and everybody come off the field safe.
Exactly.
So part of your position being a deep guy, and I know it does come into play a little bit more often, it seems like, at the bigger levels, is a player going out of bounds. Can you explain what the philosophy and possibly the mechanics with a player that goes out of bounds is?
Yeah.
Um,
So you mean like on a scrimmage play or like on a kick?
yeah, let's just on a regular offensive play.
Yeah.
If a
Yeah.
wide receiver goes out of bounds per
Yeah.
se, how does that work?
Yeah, well, so you'll notice if you watch a game, and most officials notice that we throw our hats, right? And the big joke
Hmm.
is I have a big giant bald spot on top of my head. So when I throw my hat, my kids tell me to keep my hat on. I'm like, I can't. That's the mechanic. So the receiver, let's say he runs down the field, he steps out of bounds, whether it's a receiver or a guy covering a punt, what have you. But we throw a hat, and he can't be the first to touch the ball legally, basically. So let's just say, for example, we have a pass, and the guy he reestablishes, but let's say the defender touches the ball first. He is then eligible. But if he reestablishes and is the first to touch the ball, he cannot do that. And they know. So a good defensive back is smart. When a quarterback's scrambling around, he'll push a receiver out of bounds because he'll know that receiver is pretty much dead unless the ball gets touched by someone else.
Yep.
So that's the key. So if you ever see an official with his hat down, and we all know on this call what that means, but the average fan should realize that means that guy's gone out of bounds, and he's got to be careful.
Yeah, and it's funny because we have high school people that will do that, and that's actually not a mechanic for us.
Not a mechanic, okay?
No,
Yeah.
they pick it up from Sundays, and that's where
Yep.
we silently walk over, like, we don't throw the hat, like, just keep that thing on your head.
And you know
So
what's so funny? You talk about mechanics. So even rules, like people watch too much football on Sundays because I've had people say to me that a high school coach said, that's illegal contact. I'm like, there's no illegal contact in high school, right?
no,
Am I correct? Yeah. So that's what
yeah.
I mean. So it's because people watch stuff on Sunday and they think that applies. Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of times coaches will question me. Well, that wasn't within the 5 yards. I'm like, it
Yep.
doesn't matter. 5 yards, 10 yards, 15 yards. the ball's not in the air, there's going to be
Yep.
some contact as long as you're not
Correct.
impeding or stopping. I mean, hand fighting happens, so we're not going to call that. Where for you guys, it's a lot more strict with
Yeah,
being at that
and it's
five
all
six
about
yard
it's
mark.
about scoring. It's about scoring. They put the ICT rule in years ago because they wanted to open up the offense. They want more scoring. So that's what it is. So after 5 years, after 5 yards, the receivers have a little more free reign than they would in even in college. Yeah.
So now, same scenario, but let's talk about if it's a punt and that gunner term
Mhm.
that's used a lot for that outside guy. If he gets pushed out of bounds, is there a difference between if they get pushed out of bounds or if they run out of bounds themselves?
That's a great question. So we have a foul. It used to be called a pop. Now it's called a pock. It's player out of bounds on a kick, right? POK. And so if he goes out on his own, like let's say he veers out on his own, that's an immediate flag. It's a 5 yard tack on. But generally a gunner's going to get pushed out. He's going to be ridden out of bounds. Now the other thing is the guy blocking him can't hit him out of bounds. So we use the philosophy of you can't have 4 feet in the white. So if you have the gunners
Okay.
2 feet in the white, you can't have the blockers 2 feet hitting him. Then that's a 15 yard penalty on the return team, right? So in any event, the gunner shouldn't go out. Now if he steps like not on purpose, just sort of steps on the line on his way downfield, we're going to let that go. It's different than a pock where he takes like a 90-degree angle, goes out of bounds on his own, so the guy won't hit him. Basically,
Yeah.
he's getting an advantage doing that. So, but again, a lot of it comes. He can't be the first to touch the ball, and we have other rules where, like, if he touches the ball in a certain area, it might result in in a touchback. There's different enforcements, but like I said, a lot of it is. We'll get to the point where, like, the back judge will say, like to us, why do you have your hat off? And I'll be like, number 37 went out of bounds. And he'll be like, okay, number 80 down the ball, we're cool. But we always have to be on the same page where we know the number of the guy. We write down the numbers of the gunners before the game on our cards.
Okay.
Yeah, so so if you're in doubt, you can look at your card and say, oh, 37 is a gunner. He touched the ball. That's a foul. So we try to be on the same page when it comes to that.
Now, is there also a penalty for if he does get pushed out of bounds that he needs to try to work his way back in bounds
Yep.
as soon as possible? Because I've seen some guys get shoved out of bounds and then they're booking
Yes.
15, 20 yards down the sideline because they know they can't get hit again.
True. Yeah. So that's a great point. We have, the way we describe it, they have to banana in. So if they get pushed out, they have to angle back in pretty quickly. They can't sort of run parallel. They can't stutter step because that is a foul. They're getting, if you think about it, they're getting an advantage. They're using the sideline as a buffer where they can't be
Yep.
hit for 5, 10, 15 yards. But if they banana in, and I'm not saying a 50-yard banana where they're taking their time, but they make a concerted effort to get back in, then it's okay. Yeah.
I like that. You're harnessing your inner John Gruden there with the Y banana.
Well, yeah, I'm not as smart as he is, but yeah, we try something.
That's his famous play call. What is it, Spider 2 Y banana or something like that he always
Yeah,
talks
yeah,
about,
well,
or
yeah,
that the impersonators like to do.
I
So,
know they do the Gruden impersonations. Like I said, I'm just a downfield guy. It's funny. Sometimes Sean, like, he'll be like near the huddle, our referee, and he'll hear like the play calls, and he'll like repeat them as a joke in our headsets, and we're like, "What the heck's he talking about?" Because they have a lot of different terminology and things, and we're just downfield saying doesn't apply to us, right? So.
now, are you guys pulling a Joe Montana and identifying John Candy sitting in the front of the bleachers?
No, well, we'll put it this way: our crew is really loose. Like we'll talk, but the other thing you have to be careful about is when you talk. Obviously, you're on the mic, and people, not necessarily the people on television, but people can hear what you're saying. So
Yeah.
you have to be careful in some respects. Yeah.
Now, are you guys mic'd up to New York?
It's weird. So we are. So one channel we can all hear each other and New York.
Okay.
But then New York has a separate channel that they can only communicate to the referee on.
Okay.
But so for example, if we have a review, I'll stand next to a coach and I can hear everything New York is saying to the referee when he's at the tablet. So I'll tell the coach, they're probably going to overturn this, just because I can hear what they're saying before the referee makes the announcement. So yeah, so generally we are in the loop in terms of what's going on.
Yeah, and that's a good point because when you do see those replays and stuff like that, you'll see the offense coming back onto the field before
Yep.
the white hat even
Yes.
comes out and makes the call. But that's you guys communicating and listening
That's how
in
they
and
know.
letting them know.
That's
Yep.
how you know. If you notice, like a lot of times we'll cover our mouths so people can't read our lips, but we're telling the coach, by the way, you're going to lose this challenge. Get your defense on the field, something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Well, you guys got to get a call sheet like all the
Yeah.
coaches have in front of their
No,
mouths.
that's yeah. I don't know if we can do that. So
So now, obviously, when you're working games in the national spotlight like that, you guys, like we mentioned, have a ton of different eyes on you. What do you feel is one of the most challenging aspects of your job working with the NFL? If you can talk about it.
there's a lot of scrutiny, obviously. During the week, so I'm not on any social media, right? But I'll tell you a story. There's a guy on my crew who worked the playoff game, and he had a tight call, and he was correct, okay? But the team that lost didn't think he was correct. So he got a bunch of nasty text messages, and his Facebook account was hacked. So like
Oh,
all the stuff that was on his Facebook account was on the internet. So I mean, the scrutiny is rough. Again, it comes with the territory. People want to yell at you on a Sunday. That's fine. But the vitriol and the stuff that happens, during the week and a lot, it's part of the I guess the job. But that does make it a little bit difficult. And it just like I said, there are some games like for example the Super Bowl. They probably had 80 or 90 or 100 cameras for the Super Bowl.
yeah.
I've had games. We joke if you have like a 1 o'clock game in the 1 o'clock window, you might have 8 cameras. Which so I'll tell you a story. We had last year. I don't know, week 6. We had a game in Tampa, and we had a play where I think it was Atlanta. The guy was crossing the goal line, and he dropped the ball right as he was crossing the goal line, and the guy on the pylon gave him a touchdown. And we think maybe he dropped it, but we didn't know. But we didn't have a pylon camera, so he got a touchdown.
Wow.
The next Thursday, I had the Jets. It was Halloween. I had the Jets against Houston. They did the same thing. The Jets guy did it, but we had a pylon camera, and it showed that he dropped it short of the goal line, and it
Yep.
was a touchback, and they didn't score a touchdown. So that's an example of having 8 cameras in Tampa on a Sunday and having 25 cameras on a Thursday night in the Meadowlands. So that was the
That's
difference.
it.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I didn't realize that it fluctuated with the different games. I mean, obviously, your bigger games, your Super Bowls and playoffs, everybody's there with a camera and different
Yeah.
angles and stuff like that. So is there a minimum amount of cameras
I
that you'll
think
have
8
for a
is the
replay?
minimum.
Okay.
I think 8 is the minimum. So, when you have 8, they have the ones you see on TV, but they don't have the pylon camera. They don't have the spider thing going over top that gives you the shots. But I want to say 8 is the minimum. And honestly, there's a real good video that the NFL put out about, I think it was about replay, and they talked about, and I think they said there might be 100 cameras on a Super Bowl, which is crazy. They have
Yeah.
cameras everywhere, but I think 8 is the minimum. Yeah.
That's I never realized that. That's good stuff. So how about memories? You've had to have worked some pretty big games. You have any like great memories, positive memories? Don't have to give specific details, just of how a play played out or something that like, yeah, I got that one.
Yeah, well, as officials, we know like when you nail something, you feel really good. But I'll tell you a funny story. My first playoff game, I had the Giants in Green Bay. It was like I
Okay.
guess it was 2012, whatever it was, and it was when the Packers were I don't know 14-2. The Giants were like 9-7. The Giants went in there, and if you're people don't remember this unless you're Giant fans, Eli Manning threw a Hail Mary pass, and I think Mario Manningham caught it in the end zone right before the half. So I was at work one day and my assistant said, "Hey, there's a picture of you on the Giants website because I think they won the Super Bowl that year." So it was that picture. So I found the picture and I have it framed over my fireplace. So my neighbor, who's been in my house 100 times, walks in. He goes, "Oh, that's a great picture. Are you a Giant fan?" I'm like, "No, dummy. I'm in the background." Because I was standing right there, they made the catch right there. Yeah, so that was a pretty cool memory. And it was my first playoff game, also. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Now
Yeah.
that wouldn't be the same game as Tom Coughlin's face looked like it was about to
Nope.
freeze off.
It
Okay.
was 5 years later because I remember
Okay.
watching that game at my mother-in-law's house because I wasn't in the league yet. And it was 5 years after that. So because it's funny, my referee was a guy named Bill Levy who unfortunately passed away. He was a great man. He was an alternate on that game, And when we had our game, it was like 20 degrees, and that game was like 20 below. And Bill said,
Yeah.
"Man, it's 40 degrees warmer than it was 5 years ago." Yeah.
Oh, I'm a Giant fan, and I do remember that game, and I felt bad because Tom Coughlin he didn't keep his face covered whatsoever,
I
and
don't know. He didn't care.
his skin looked like as brittle as can be. So,
No kidding. No
uh,
kidding.
so for the Packer fans that are out there, and for the Patriot fans that are out there, I'm sorry because yes, we did win the Super Bowl both those years. I'm,
True.
I'm saying we as like I'm part of the Giants, but I'm just a Giant fan.
Well, they've
But
been able to brag a little bit more than you lately, the last couple of years, right? The Giants haven't been as good as either team the last couple of years.
moving on. So just and you started off the show talking about tonight, and this is we're kind of veering off to a different tangent. You mentioned that you're sitting in your office right now. You're sitting in your work office, I'm assuming, and when
Yes.
you're talking about your work office, it's not the NFL offices in New York City. Can safe to assume that?
Yeah, I'm in Wall Township, New Jersey, which is probably what 60 miles from New York City. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So you work another job. You're just not a full
Yeah.
time
So
NFL referee.
we're the only sport that's not full time. Like the baseball, basketball, and hockey guys, that's all they do. The NFL did try full time officials a little bit, but if you think about it, we work 20 weekends a year if you count the preseason, and then we have training camp and that kind of stuff. So really, from let's say I don't know mid June to early February, you're busy. You're very busy. But from the time the Super Bowl ends till May 15th, there's not a lot going on.
Mm-hmm.
Now we still have to stay in shape. We get our physicals, I think, this year on June 1st. So, but it's not a full time job. It is tough, honestly, to juggle two jobs in the fall. A lot of people, when they're to the point where, let's say, their kids are out of college and maybe they're ready to retire, they'll just retire and only do football. But for most of us, we have a second job, and the NFL, we don't have tenure, and you would never quit your day job, because if they decide they don't want you anymore, then you have no job. So
Gotcha.
it is a part time thing, but again, it's part time on paper, but it's probably we probably put in say 60 hours a week, not including the travel, in the fall basically. Yeah.
So, could you give a quick breakdown of what your if for a Sunday game, an upcoming Sunday game? Um, you're in New Jersey, so let's say Green Bay. We're talking about Green Bay. You got a game on Sunday in Green Bay. Can you give just like a brief synopsis of what your week would look like leading up to
Of
that
course.
Sunday?
Yeah. So ironically enough, Green Bay is the only city that I go to that I can't fly direct, because I live in the Newark airport, right? So I can go direct to every city in the league from Newark. But because of that, I can leave. I leave on Saturday. Generally like early morning, mid morning. We get to the game, to the city. Let's say Saturday afternoon. We have meetings like 3-4 hours on a Saturday. We go to dinner Saturday night. We work the game Sunday. We're not allowed to book flights home before, I think, 5 hours after kickoff. So if you have a 1 o'clock kickoff, you can't book anything before a 6 p.m. flight. So generally, if I get a 6:30 flight out of wherever, Chicago, wherever it is, I'm home, 9, 10 o'clock on a Sunday night. So I'm lucky where I can leave Saturday morning and be home Sunday night generally. If I have a
Hmm.
West Coast game or a weeknight game, then it's a little different. But that you get home Sunday night. I've found that like Monday mornings, I don't book a lot work wise, on my schedule. Like I work, but I'm not going to have a 8 o'clock meeting. I'll tell you that much, because I'm rolling in sometimes, late at night. But so that'll take care of that game. But then we all do self evaluation, and I'll have watched my game, let's say Monday and Tuesday. So Tuesday night, the preliminary grades come out. We get graded
Okay.
on every play of every game, and then
Yep.
Wednesday they collaborate, and that by Wednesday night the final grades come out, and then you sort of put that game to bed, because Thursday, Friday you sort of ramp up for your next game. You scout and everything. I generally don't work Fridays in this job during the season, because I'm prepping for my games on Fridays.
Yep.
So that's sort of the cycle of what you do. But like I said, it's I was lucky enough to have a game in Munich this year. We all took our wives, and some people took their kids, so that was nice. That was like a little vacation. They give you a bye week on the back end of those games, so you don't have to rush
Okay.
back to the states to work another game. But for the most part, it's continual from let's say I don't know, late July until the playoffs are over, basically.
So now, when you're doing your self evaluating, what film do you have that you can evaluate from? Do you get all the different angles that the NFL has, that the TV crews and stuff like that have, or are you just basically one angle?
That's a great question. So we used to get thumb drives when we left the locker room, and they would be like the TV cut. So we would just get the TV stuff. Now they gave us iPads, right? So we can download. We have a thing called DV Sport. I don't know if anybody
Hmm.
uses it, but they're out of Pittsburgh. It's really, really good, and all the plays are numbered. And you get on the DV Sport. I think you get a end zone, a sideline, you get the TV stuff, and you get what we call the all 29,
All
which is from
22.
up top. You can say, yeah, all 20. Everyone, most people call it all 22, but the officials call it all 29 because there are seven of us on
Yep.
top of the 22. But yeah, so we can really see everything. So we have a lot of tools. You know what? When I first started, we didn't have that, and I would DVR my games, and I'd go home and I'd watch them. I'd watch the TV tape. But it's really evolved where you can see everything, and you get a ton of angles, and that's why you don't only rely on the TV tape, because sometimes the TV might show one thing, but you might have a different angle that shows, as you know, officials see things differently. It's all about angles. You might
Yep.
have a better perspective from another look. Yeah.
Oh, that's good stuff. I didn't realize that you got the all 29. I like that too.
Yeah, that's
I've always
that's an
heard of it
officiating
referred
term.
to as, yeah, I've always heard
Yeah.
the all 22, but that
Well,
makes sense
that's
from our
what
point of view.
because you were a coach, right? So coaches say all 22, but officials say all 29. So we should all say that, I guess, right? So
Yeah, it's great stuff. So we're coming to that point in the show. I truly do appreciate you taking the time to jump on the show. We're up at that 45-minute mark, 46-minute mark. So I got one last question for you for all the fellow officials that I have out there that are listening, and we have people listening, like I said, in Europe. We have people down in Mexico that are listening. What piece of advice could you give to them that are aspiring to not move up to the NFL per se, but just possibly to move up or to be the best official that they can be? What kind of advice do you possibly
yeah,
have for them?
that's a great question. And anyone who's in the NFL didn't do this to be in the NFL. They started out doing high school, like you said, the camaraderie. You want to be good at what you do. You want to hit the rule book. Someone told me years ago, you want to control what you can control. You can
Yeah.
control how you look, your physical fitness, your rules knowledge, that kind of stuff. And when you're like when I go to high school games, I don't know a lot of the guys because I've been off the field for a while in high school, but I can tell you who looks good, and a lot of it's perception. If a guy shows up, and he's say 50 pounds overweight, the coach is going to right away, the coach is going to have perception. This guy doesn't know what he's doing, even if he's the
Yeah.
best official in the league. So make sure your fitness is good, your rules knowledge is good, and don't try to aspire to the next level. Just work. If you're good, people are going to find you. But just enjoy where you are, and there's nothing wrong with being a high school official forever. If people want to move up, they can move up, but it's a commitment, and like I said, just control what you can control is what I've always been told.
Yeah, absolutely, and be great in that moment is my personal philosophy. Just be great right then and there, and like you said, you just like everything else. It's the college coaches find those athletes without all the social media. If the player is great, well, it's the same thing for us. If we're doing a great job, you're going to get noticed by the
Exactly.
right people. So.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly.
Well, Jim, once again, I'd like to thank you again for taking the time out of your schedule here in your quote unquote off season, which never happens for anybody.
True.
Um, but ladies and gentlemen, once again, Mr. Jim Quirk Jr. joining us from the NFL. Truly appreciate it again, Jim. If there's anything that I can do for my humble abode here to help out, please feel free to reach out. But I don't really foresee that one happening in the future, but I got your number now, so be careful.
That's okay. I'm not going to block your calls. We're all good. So, and I appreciate you,
Thank,
Mike. Thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate it. So, thanks.
absolutely, and have a good night, and hopefully see you in the Super Bowl next year.
From your lips to God's ears, right? We'll see. Thanks.
Have a good night,
Take it
Jim.
easy. Okay, you too. Bye.